I want to welcome you guys back to another episode of Pistons Talk Podcast presented by FanDuel. Pistons played their third game of the week. Tonight was against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Second time we've seen Minnesota um, in about a week. It's kind of weird when you have these Western Conference teams. Usually they're not lumped in the schedule within a week. Sometimes they're kind of spread out a little bit, but that's how the schedule makers decided to schedule the Pistons in March and April. But we're going to get into our quarter notes. We're going to get into the box score, some team news if you guys did miss it about Cade Cunningham and Asar Thompson. So let's get into today's post game podcast. To start the first quarter with the Pistons, I really like the energy very early on. They had a small lead in the first couple of minutes in this one. Asar did pick up his first foul on Rudy Gobert. I always write his fouls down because you never know if it's going to be one of those games where he's on the bench, but he did actually a pretty good job of staying out of foul trouble. Pistons fed Jalen Duren very early on, and he was looking to attack the paint, attack Rudy Gobert and Julius Randle, which JD had a much better outing today than he did last week. He kind of struggled last week. I believe he only finished with 10 points against Rudy Gobert. It's much more physical, much more intentional with how he was looking to score tonight. And Jalen Duren did pick up his first foul on Mike Conley. Again, he stayed in pretty good standings with his fouls. He wasn't in foul trouble. Only real player that was kind of lingering was Duncan Robinson. He had like 4. I think he finished the game with 5. Danish Jenkins was also helping in the scoring department. He dropped 7 points very early on. And there was a timeout taken after the Pistons went up 18-12. Not really sure who called the timeout. They didn't say in the broadcast, but Pistons did have a 6-point lead at that point. Tobias Harris, unfortunately, bumped knees with Gobert, limped up and down the court. Pistons had to take a timeout, and they were up 20-17. And later in the broadcast, it was announced that he had a knee contusion and he would not play for the remainder of the game. So hopefully Tobias is good. Usually when you have a contusion, it's a bruise on that area. Hopefully he can just ice it, get the swelling down, and he could be good to go against Philly in a couple of days. But this game, I felt in the first quarter and then like later in the second half, the officials missed so many fouls at the rim. Um, and like I'm not saying that the officials need to call every single call, but there was a lot of contact around the rim, especially with Jalen Duren and even Danish Jenkins a little bit, where they just were not calling fouls. Like Ron Holland got slapped and then like raked across the eye on a dunk attempt in the second half, and they didn't call it. There was just some like crazy fouls. Like Nas Reed fell down, and they said Paul Reed touched him when he did, and he just stumbled. JD did pick up his second foul, trying to reject the Nas Reed slam dunk. Second unit kind of fell in love with isolation late in this first quarter, and the Timberwolves were able to get out to a 1-point lead after Kyle Anderson just kind of had a last second tip. So it was 31-30 after 12 minutes. Going into the second quarter, Javonte Green did start for Tobias Harris because of his injury. Karis LeVert started the quarter with a really big corner 3 that gave him a lead. And then the next possession, he had an isolation basket. And then the defense and the effort in the second quarter just wasn't as consistent as it was in the first quarter early on. And the Timberwolves, I should say, were able to go on a 14-4 run. And the Pistons had a little, I would probably say maybe a good 3 to 4 minutes where they couldn't buy a bucket, but they were able to end the second on a 9-2 run and have an even score at 54 after 24 minutes of play. And this was a very entertaining game for all 48 minutes. I expected Minnesota to come with a little bit more energy, a little bit more fight, because if you guys remember when we played them at their place last week, I believe they only dropped 87 points and they shot a miserable like 30% from the field. They made more than 30% of their field goals tonight. But this was a very entertaining game. Coming out of halftime, Danish Jenkins was way more aggressive, looking to score He finished the game with over 26 points, led the Pistons in scoring tonight, and a lot of lead changes and with both of these teams. They're just exchanging baskets, but the Pistons were able to get back-to-back threes, one from Kevin Huerter and then one by Javonte Green, and they were up 6. They were up 72-67, and the T-Wolves took a timeout. Then we got the Bones Highland and the Marcus Sasser. This was weird. Jalen Duren gets fouled, and on the second free throw attempt, Bones Highland decides, I'm just going to cheap shot Marcus Sasser on the side of the face. Sasser took exception to it, shoved him, and they both got called for double text, which I don't really agree. I can understand why officials do this, but I mean, Sasser got hit like around the eye area, and I feel like Bones Highland probably just should have got the tech. They gave Sasser a tech probably for kind of just shoving him the way he did aggressively, but I don't know. You hit someone in the face, like you expect them not to do anything. It's kind of self-defense at that point. But JB decided he was going to match big for big. First time that we've seen a double big lineup with Paul Reed and Jalen Duren, and he was asked about it in his post-game press conference, and he said, I was just trying to match size for size. They had Gobert and Julius Randle out there. He's like, I wanted to do double bigs too. Usually we see double bigs with Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren, but it was kind of a refreshing thing to see Paul Reed and Jalen Duren out there. Minnesota did have a stronger quarter in this one, and they were able to get out to a 1-point lead to end the third, 80-79. To start the fourth quarter, Danish Jenkins just had some big buckets early in the fourth, getting to the free throw line, hitting his shots, and the Pistons scored 7 straight. It was a Danish Jenkins and one. Mike Conley fouled them, did a really strong drive on the left-hand side of the court, and one. Asar Thompson had this like little side hook, and then Rod had that dunk. So the Pistons were up 92-89, and then they scored 4 more times after Minnesota took a timeout. So that 7-0 run turned into an 11-0 run, and then eventually it turned into an 18-3 run because the Pistons were just making stops and they were capitalizing on them, and they were able to maintain their lead and kind of keep Minnesota at bay. It did get a little bit interesting down the stretch, I will admit. I was getting a little bit nervous, but the Pistons were able to survive this one and win 113-108. This is a season series sweep. I had to slow down there for a little bit. They sweep the Minnesota Timberwolves, something that we haven't done in quite some time. And it's always good when you're able to beat a playoff team like Minnesota. I think a lot of people are thinking that they're kind of strategically playing the seeding game right now. Anthony Edwards has come back from injury, but they decided to sit him out still. Jade McDaniels was out, but we didn't have Cade Cunningham, Isaiah Stewart, and Tobias Harris only played like 2 or 3 minutes in this one. You got to play who's out there, and the Pistons did that, but it was a really good win. You have an opportunity to clinch the number 1 seed with the next team you play in Philly, the 76ers. Philly has actually played some pretty good basketball since Paul George has come back from that suspension. He's looking like the Paul George from a couple of years ago. Maybe he needed that 25-game suspension. Maybe he was still taking PEDs during that 25-game suspension because he looks like Paul George from like 3 or 4 years ago. But it'll be interesting to see how the Pistons match up with the 76ers and Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey and all those guys over there. It'd be really cool if they were able to lock up the number 1 seed this week, and then you have the final week of the regular season where maybe you can kind of experiment, give deeper bench guys some rotation and just kind of finish off the season. Maybe you can get to 60 wins. You never know, but want to kind of get into Asar Thompson and Cade Cunningham, and then we'll get into the box score. So let's start with the Asar Thompson stuff first. So if you guys didn't see today, Asar Thompson won his 2nd consecutive Eastern Conference Defensive Player of the Month. 2nd time he's done this. Obviously, the other player on the roster that has won a Defensive Player of the Month is Isaiah Stewart. But shout out to Asar, man. He averaged 2.5 steals and 1.1 blocks per game. Him and Victor Wembanyama both took home Defensive Player of the Month for their separate conferences. But Asar has just been fantastic defensively over the past 2 months. He's really amped it up. I remember the Golden State game where he had 7 steals. He's just been on an absolute tear, and he's done a better job of actually defending without fouling. He's been, staying out of foul trouble for the most part, but shout out to him. Much deserved. Really, really happy for the kid that he was able to win another Defensive Player of the Month. And then the Cade news, I made a short on YouTube if you guys saw it, or if you guys follow us on TikTok or Instagram, about Cade Cunningham's reevaluation. So the Pistons medical staff put this out. It was a press release by them, and it says Pistons guard Cade Cunningham continues to progress, in his return to play process under the supervision of physicians and Pistons medical and performance staff. He will be reevaluated in 1 week. So Cade Cunningham is going to be out for 1 more week, and the Pistons will be reevaluating him on April 9th. So I think this was kind of the plan with the Detroit Pistons, was just trying to get Cade, ramped up and ready for the playoffs. I don't really think we're going to see him at all in the regular season. Maybe the last game. I could be wrong there, but I think the Pistons just want to get him, physically prepared for the playoffs, because the play-in tournament kind of gives them a couple of days, and I believe the playoffs will start on the 17th or the 18th, if I remember correctly. So pretty good chance we get a healthy Cade Cunningham back just in time for the Eastern Conference playoffs. And he was on the bench tonight, bumping chest. He looks like he's in good spirits. Looks like, he's still going through his I don't want to call it a rehab, because it's not really a rehabilitation. He's just going through his process of getting back to action. But wanted to update you guys on the Asar Thompson winning Defensive Player of the Month and Cade Cunningham. There was something on the broadcast about Isaiah Stewart. Don't know if this is 100% accurate. George Blaha on the broadcast said about Isaiah Stewart that the Pistons are going to be holding him out for the remainder of the season and making sure he's right for the playoffs. Now, the Pistons have not actually updated anything on Isaiah Stewart. That's the first time I've heard it. So maybe George heard it in-house. Being around the team as much as he is, maybe he overheard it from somebody on the Detroit Pistons staff. So Stu could be out for the remainder of the season, but wanted to update you guys on Asar, Cade Cunningham, and Isaiah Stewart. But let's get into the box score, and then we'll open up the show to comments and questions with you guys. So if we look at the box score with the Detroit Pistons against the Minnesota Timberwolves in this one tonight, Tobias only played 6 minutes, injured himself. He did score 2 points. Actually scored the points he injured himself on. So I guess you got to kind of credit him for finishing through contact, even though he did injure himself on that play. Duncan Robinson in 29 minutes had 15 points. He was 5 out of 11 from the field, 3 to 7 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 turnovers, 1 steal. He was a plus 10 in this one for the Pistons. Jalen Duren in a much better outing against Rudy Gobert in this one, finished with 22 points in 36 minutes. He was 8 out of 15 from the field, 6 out of 10 from the free throw line, 14 rebounds, 4 assists, 5 turnovers, 1 steal, 2 blocks. He was a plus 6. Asar Thompson in 31 minutes finished with 7 points, where he was 3 out of 6 from the field, 1 for 2 from the free throw line, but he had 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 1 turnover, 2 steals, 3 blocks. He was a plus 15. He tied his career high with 9 blocks. I know in the postgame interview he said he wanted to get 10 assists, but his playmaking was on full display tonight. If you guys just want to watch the highlights and his playmaking, he made some really good reads. There was one pass that he found Duncan Robinson in the corner from 3. It was just such a flawless pass. I've been really impressed with his playmaking and that development. He's just really just improved as a playmaker the past 2 years. Danish Jenkins for the Pistons stepped up big time, led them in scoring, 26 points. He was 9 out of 19 from the field, 2 for 2 from 3, 6 out of 7 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 turnover, plus 13. Took care of the ball, had 8 assists, and scored 20 points. You love to see that out of a a second unit point guard in place of Cade Cunningham. He stepped up 100%. Bench unit did their thing. Paul Reed had 4 points in 16 minutes, 2 out of 4 from the field, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 turnover, 1 steal, 1 block. Ryan Holland in 16 minutes had 8 points. He was 4 out of 7 from the field, 0 for 2 from 3. Javonte Green in 27 minutes had 8 points. He was 2 out of 7 from the field, 2 for 5 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 6 rebounds, 1 turnover, 1 steal. So +3. Karis LeVert in 14 minutes had 7 points. He was 3 out of 7 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3, 0 for 2 from the free throw line, 2 rebounds, 1 turnover, 1 block. Kevin Huerter in 22 minutes had 12 points, led the whole second unit in scoring. Had a pretty efficient night as well. 4 out of 6 from the field, 2 out of 3 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. And Marcus Sasser in 8 minutes scored 2 points. Also cashed in 1 assist. But Tolu Smith and Wendell Moore did not play because obviously there wasn't really a need for Tolu or Wendell Moore. I mean, those are very deep bench pieces they don't really get to see too often. G League guys. As we look at the team stats, Pistons shot a better percentage in this one. They shot 48 to Minnesota's 44. Pistons shot a better percentage from 3. They shot 43 from 3 to Minnesota's 31, where they made 10 out of 23 attempts. Minnesota attempted 42 attempts and only made 13 of them. Pistons shot 72% from the free throw line to Minnesota's 76. Pistons were 21 out of 29. Very fortunate that the free throws didn't come back to bite them. I felt like there was a couple in the first that we did miss that, usually we do make. Rebounding, 48 to 40. Pistons won the rebounding battle. And this one almost had 30 assists again. 29 assists to Minnesota's 22. So they win that battle. Minnesota did have more steals, 8 to 7, and more blocks, 8 to 7 as well. Total turnovers, Pistons had more, 15 to 14. Fast break points, Minnesota had more, 20 to 11. Points in the paint, the Pistons won that battle 54 to 46. And then fouls were 20 for Minnesota, 19 for the Pistons, and 1 technical foul for each team. But overall, it was a very entertaining game. I feel like in the first half, we were kind of a little bit complacent, especially in the second quarter. But that fourth quarter, that run they went on, like that's the Detroit Pistons that we know and love. Just the consistency defensively, getting stops, getting into their half-court sets, hitting big shots, making those 50-50 plays, cashing in on those. But this game, when you kind of looked at the lines tonight, they only thought it was going to be a 2.5-point game, and they were actually not that far off because the final score was 113 to 109. But really fun, entertaining game if you did watch this one tonight. I do want to get into the Q&A with you guys. I want to go to Piston Fan 11, and he says, great win tonight. Sweeping the Timberwolves, especially nice given the pick swap we have with them. Any news on Tobias postgame? So I want to get into your first comment. There may be some people that don't know. When we made the Jaden Ivey trade with Minnesota and Chicago, we swapped draft picks with Minnesota. I actually want to check to see where that draft pick currently is on Tankathon right now with you guys. So currently the Pistons pick is at 21, and I know there is protections on it. So the protections on the pick with Minnesota and Detroit is top 19 protected. So Minnesota, if they finish with the 19th pick, they get their pick back, and then we get our pick back. So that swap doesn't exist anymore, but it's sitting at 21 right now. I'm kind of curious to see who Tankathon has as mock, just because I haven't looked at mock drafts and it seems like 2 years. And they would have us taking Chris Senick Jr. out of Houston. Actually, he kind of seems like a Piston. That's kind of funny. Kind of like him a lot, but kind of seems like a project player at power forward/center. But hey, if you guys want to keep an eye on that Minnesota pick, definitely do on Tankathon. If it goes to 19, Minnesota gets their pick back because it's top 19 protected. But hey, a late draft pick at 21, you may be able to get a guy that you like in this upcoming draft, but you may be able to, possibly trade up for a guy like Yaxel. You never know. You never know. I know a lot of Pistons fans are really high on Yaxel right now, and I can completely understand why. He would be a really good fit for the Pistons. The age doesn't really concern me with him whatsoever. I just think he'd be a really good fit on this team. And to your second question, Piston Fan 11, any news on Tobias postgame? I know reporters asked, but JB did not have an immediate answer with Tobias. I know the broadcast said it was contusion. Contusions are bruises, so I think the treatment with that will probably just be some ice and to see how that swelling is. See if he's good to go against Philly. I hope he is because that's Tobias's former team. Seems like every time we do play Philly, Tobias does get up for those games. I always think of the crumble cookie interview. If you guys have never seen that when Tobias was in Philly, they said they trade me for a crumble cookie. It's an all-timer. It's an all-timer. Definitely look it up. It's really funny. Disregard Kevin Huerter's three-point shooting reputation. His underrated defense and playmaking ability will be an asset come playoff time. I honestly think like the past couple of games, I know the broadcast said it before the game started, he's shooting over 40% from three and 50% from the field, but I've been really impressed with him. The defense I really like. I think it's one part of his game that doesn't maybe get talked about a lot. I've liked his just ability to stay in front of people, switch, communicate, and then the playmaking ability too. It seems like at least once a game, he just makes a really under the radar type of like read, like with Duran, or if he's kicking out to an open shooter in the corner from three, like his playmaking ability. I think has kind of gone undersold. I know Trajan had kind of touched on it when he traded for him, saying like, we really like his ability to handle the basketball and shooting, but I think he's kind of gotten, his swagger back a little bit because that shot looks good. The form looks good. I think he just needed a little bit more opportunity here in Detroit. And I think JB is really liking to have, got Duncan in the starting lineup. Then you got Kevin Huerter off the bench. So you always have a 3-point shooter out there. I mean, if he can get back to the form where he was, close to a 40% 3-point shooter come playoff time, that's a huge asset for the Detroit Pistons. 100% agree there. Motor City Ben Diesel. These games are so good for Danis and crunch time. This is going to help our team in playoffs so much. I know you mentioned it last time, like Cade's injury could be a blessing in disguise. And you're right. Like when you get reps, if you're Danis Jenkins or any type of bench guy on the Pistons right now, and you're able to get these reps while he's out, like they're good in-game reps come playoff time. Like, Danis won't be afraid to, take those big shots because he's done it all year. He won't be afraid to, operate out of the half court because he's getting all these reps as the starting guard playing high minutes in the 30s. So it's just probably going to help him in his development of being that backup point guard. We could see lineups where he's out there with Cade, of, having two ball handlers and, him playing off ball or Cade playing off ball. I think there's a lot of different lineup combinations that JB will probably throw out there in the playoffs. But I agree, man. Like he's really stepped up, during this absence with Cade. He's 12-4 as a starter for the Detroit Pistons this season, and he's been such a good story. He really has. I think last year the Pistons were the story of the NBA because they tripled their win total, and then they're a story this year because they've been the top dogs of the Eastern Conference. But everyone's just like, where do they find Danis Jenkins, undrafted guy that they stashed in their G League and developed him last year, and took advantage of an opportunity of players being hurt, and he's never looked back. He's taken full advantage of Jaden Ivey kind of going through his arthroscopic surgery, and he stepped right in, and he hasn't looked back. He's been in the starting lineup and got a standard contract. So I'm really happy for him and his camp and his everyone that has helped train him along the way. It's a really good story, and I'm happy for the kid. And the magic number is now down to 1. Yeah, one more win, you guys. One more win. The Detroit Pistons will lock up that number 1 seed. And they will have home court in the first round. Be interesting to see, though, who is going to be in that play-in tournament. And I think it's really, if you look at the Pistons schedule, actually, I think it's sometimes schedules work in your favor for playoffs, and like I'll kind of explain where I'm getting at with that. So if you look at the remainder games on the schedule, okay, so teams that are kind of like in that play-in. Orlando is in the play-in. You see them next Monday at their place, and they're just, I don't know what's going on in Orlando, man. I really don't. Looks like Jamal Mosley has completely lost that locker room. But you also get to see Charlotte in Charlotte. And those are two teams that could be, first round matchups that you could possibly see. But, the remainder games, I can just kind of go over the schedule with you guys. You got at Philly this Saturday, at Orlando on Monday. Your final home game of the season on April 8th against the Bucks, at Charlotte, and then at Indiana. So those are your final games of the season. I will be at the Milwaukee Bucks game on Wednesday. I do want to update you guys there. So I will not be doing a post-game podcast. The Pistons actually invited me out to that game. It's a fan appreciation night game, and I'm really excited to share some behind-the-scenes content when I do go down there with you guys. So I'll be sure to take a bunch of videos and photos of the experience. But it was really cool to see the Detroit Pistons actually reach out, and they want to have me down in their suite for that fan appreciation night. I love it, man. I love that they reached out, but I've always told you guys the reason why I do these post game podcasts, the reason why I like making Detroit Pistons content is because I'm a fan just like you guys, and I enjoy the Detroit Pistons. Whether they go 0-82 or 82-0, or they have a season like this where they just won their 56th game of the season, we're still going to be doing these post game podcasts. We're still going to be talking about the Pistons after the season's over. We're still going to be talking about it. You guys know we do podcasts all year long. It doesn't stop after the season's over. We love doing podcasts. But again, the Detroit Pistons win this one against the Minnesota Timberwolves with a final score of 113 to 108. 56th win of the season. Next game will be against Philly on Saturday. If you guys want to watch our live streams, we have it scheduled on our YouTube channel. Should already be scheduled, so you guys should be able to find it very easily on our live feed when you do go on our YouTube channel to watch these post-game shows. If you're an audio listener, you just like to listen to the audio side, 100% understand, not pressuring you to watch one of these post-game shows. But if you want to come in, ask some questions, just have a chill podcast with us, you're more than welcome to. But hope you guys stay safe. Have a good night. And as always, go Pistons. Peace.